Oh, the recording has been started.
Welcome to Cognitive Cul-De-Sac. I'm your host, Brandon.
And I was thinking that we really don't have an intro really nailed down yet.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's not.
Okay.
But
make
I'm
them-
James.
Well, that's our intro.
Yeah.
Technically, that qualifies.
Well, ultimately, it's just a matter of warming not only ourselves, but, any hypothetical audience up to
Mm-hmm. All 6 of them.
some general
I think we're up to 6 now, right?
conversation.
Yeah.
Probably. So how are you, man?
I'm good. I just learned that narwhal tusks are a tooth.
Mm-hmm.
That's
making
alarming.
them tusks and not horns.
Right, exactly. But it moved onto its head. It's like if you had one molar on your forehead is basically what a narwhal is.
Right. Well, canine, right? Those pointy boys.
Yeah, okay. So
it didn't have far to go. Just like
canine
through a
on your
lip
forehead.
and then out of the forehead.
Yeah. So that kind of took me for a wild ride when I learned that. And then let's see what else is going on.
Oh, and you learned that killer whales are dolphins.
Yeah.
And bilingual.
Bilingual.
Mm-hmm.
They speak the language of their food, whales and dolphins,
Yeah.
which is super morbid.
You don't
That
speak
would be
the
like
language
us
of any
learning
of
how
your food?
learning how to moo and understanding moos.
Well, funnily enough, there is actually some of this prepared content, which I don't know. If I feel like we talked before this. We're warm. We're hot. We're loose.
I'm feeling pretty warm and loose.
So in regards to what is delicious and nutritious,
Yeah.
I will say that cash is the most nutritious leafy green.
Okay. Is that it?
Well, there are others, but
It's literal is what you mean.
Yeah,
That makes
people
sense.
say money doesn't grow on trees, but I would,
Where is the
contend
wood
that-
fiber that they use to make money harvested from? Is it grass?
I think
Is
it's
it
cotton
trees?
fiber.
It's cotton.
Mhm.
Okay.
It's like a linen paper blend.
So then it's closer to a textile, right, than a food. Money is.
Well, sure, but ultimately, you're going to get more nutrition out of having lots of money than having lots of pine needles.
So in an apocalyptic
Other
scenario, we
leaves.
could eat money, is what you're trying to get at.
Hay
Or burn it.
fiber.
So would it be more useful to burn it or eat it
Well,
and cook some narwhal up?
this is I think a broader way of saying that you can eat the rich.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
that's an interesting saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've been seeing it scrawled on more and more walls. The proletariat is
Where
becoming-
else would you write
The
it?
proletariat is
How
becoming
else would you
increasingly
write it?
disfranchised these days, and if I were rich, I'd be a little nervous right now.
So I'll say too, the other two sort of axioms for this discussion are that villains do more good than heroes,
Okay.
and fiction is the future.
Okay, so let's go to the villains do more good than heroes, because that could be a contentious issue.
I would hope so.
So I'm just like forecasting what your argument is going to be, and I think that it's since villains provide a common enemy, they bring the people together in a way that a hero alone can't.
Well, sure, but also I think what's interesting about hero or villains in that way is that they then heroes are defined in the ways that the villains test them, and without diversity in villainry, you would end up with just super generic heroes.
Yeah,
And
like Superman.
right?
He's just like everything he's perfect at.
Mm-hmm.
He's super good looking. He's a great reporter. He flies. He doesn't have tentacles. He just is a guy.
No, just that little forehead tentacle that may or may not just
Yeah.
be hair or a tooth. We don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know what those Kryptonians are.
Yeah, they might have some morphological differences that we probably shouldn't get into on this podcast, but yes.
So, have you? So there, in regards to the fiction things, there were a couple books that I was thinking about. One of which is, popular science fiction, or at least classic science fiction, with The Time Machine.
Mm-hmm. I've
By
never read The
H.G.
Time
Wells.
Machine. I watched the movie adaptation with the crazy futuristic underground moon hider guys.
Yeah, and
Those
so
are scary.
that adaptation is an adaptation of Time Machine, or The Time Machine.
I don't know. I've never read the book. I thought it was.
Well, I read it a while ago. I read an article that referenced it more recently, but in it is this, in the far, far future, the like super rich people had just bred themselves into these kind of like fleet-footed, ethereal, happy to do people that, ate diets of, plants and vegetables and fruits, all the
Sounds
while
good.
enjoying lots of leisure time and whatever. And then you found out that there was an underground group of people, the Eloi being the elvish almost people of
And then the
the high
dwarves.
class, and then the Murlocs,
Yeah.
which were subterranean,
Mm-hmm.
like go for people that
Yeah, it was basically a future adaptation of like normal science fiction or fiction speciation. I mean, you have like dwarves and elves, and for whatever reason, that really seems to like keep recurring in fiction, like in the past and in the future.
right,
There's some interest that humanity
furthering my
has in
point that fiction is in fact the future.
Absolutely.
It's an interpretation of something that isn't known yet.
So, like hundreds of years ago, when they were talking about dragons and like elves and stuff, was that them projecting, or was that them sort of pontificating / reminiscing about fantastical past bygone days?
Well, I mean, do we not have like flame breathing, air based entities?
I guess in some weird twisted way, yeah.
I mean, explicitly we do. I could point to like some
They're
jet that's
non-biological.
equipped with. Oh yeah, I mean sure,
Yeah.
but neither are dragons.
Dragons aren't biological. That's a headcanon. I think
Well,
you're making it up.
I haven't.
think
Have
you're
we
making that up.
sequenced the genome of the dragon?
It could be cyborg future
Our
military aircraft sent back in time.
delusions and
to eat
hallucinations
princesses.
of a fantasy world
Mm-hmm.
biological?
I have no idea.
I
I
mean,
think you're
wouldn't
going
you
off the
say
deep
that
end.
anything in the head is an electrical impulse that is
Okay.
not
All right.
inorganic in nature?
Yeah, these are some mental gymnastics you're running through.
It's what we do here.
Yeah, we try our best.
So back to the Eloi and the Murlocs.
Mhm.
This guy is traveling into the future and he sees some Eloi and he's like, wow, these people really have it good. And then he sees the Murlocs coming up to like serve them and feed them and like wait on them hand and foot.
Mhm.
He's like, wow, they have it pretty rough. Until he, familiarizes himself with the Murlocs and realizes that they're just farming the Eloi.
Mhm.
The Eloi are consumed daily
Right, yeah.
by the Murlocs. They have a rich diet of meat. The
It
Eloi couldn't
sounds-
dream of meat. They wouldn't taint their body with it.
It sounds more like an allegory for wealth gap.
Well, and they're explicitly eating the rich.
Exactly. Yeah. So
And they feed the rich so that they're delicious and nutritious.
so
With
while
cash money and spinach.
I think
and
being
kale.
more than a projection of potential future events, these allegories might be more of fantasy on the part of somebody in the working class, right? Like in the best possible world, you have the poor eating the rich. Like if you are a working class person and you're reading this, so it makes a lot of sense that you would write these into fiction.
Well, and I think noting that like the youth are generally responsible for creating the future, right? Just assuming like a pretty linear progression of time.
Yeah.
Then would it not be really a good idea to, show them the future that you want them to build?
One in which the rich are eaten.
Well, I mean, in the case of H.G. Wells.
It's just like a perversion of class dynamics. I mean, I think it's probably being used as a negatory example, something that shouldn't be strived for because it is one of the inevitable conclusions if the current situation keeps going the way it is.
And
right? If we don't somehow
ultimately-
distribute wealth equitably among all people, you're going to have something nasty like that happen. It's almost like a warning fable for the rich.
I think you're right. And what we can then, really prove is that the way that stories inspire, people to deliberate about what the future looks like, shows that then the future will inevitably look like something that came out of fiction.
Mm-hmm. I mean, irregardless of how the future progresses, if you showed it to someone today, the 1,000 little developments that occur historically and stack up is going to make the future totally unrecognizable.
I bet that one of the first 100 models of spaceships available to the middle class will be a Millennium Falcon knockoff.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a really good point, actually. I see where you're going with this. There's a trilogy called Into the Bobiverse. I don't know if you've heard about this.
I have not.
So it's about von Neumann space probes, and it's about digitization of human intellect. So this guy Bob is walking around in like the early 21st century, like we are.
Classic Bob.
He's just like a sort of unassuming programmer type, and he sells his company that kind of made it big overnight. Found himself pretty flush with cash, and on a whim at a convention, had paid a company to, upon his death, freeze his brain, and then like a week later he dies and wakes up like a couple hundred years into the future, and they're like, "Yo, we're about to put you through some trials, and then we're gonna upload you to a von Neumann space probe." And the whole series is about him going out, replicating himself, and he basically clones his consciousness, and each time he like sort of randomly mutates it a little bit, so it's like slightly unique and varied. And
how's that go for him?
It's good. I mean, so he literally like creates, that It's a Trap guy from Star Wars. That's like his co-pilot in VR space, and like he names like all these planets like Vulcan and Romulus and shit. And it like ends up in this future being like the maxed out version of what you're talking about, where like all of our space architecture is named by this like sci-fi nerd.
Yeah.
And like
from the past,
we have to go to Romulus basically. Yeah, like directly based on him reading science fiction in the 21st century.
Yeah. So I mean, are we then pretty much in agreement that that fiction is the future?
Absolutely. And I like the idea of leaning into it too.
Yeah, because I think too, it's like a kind of self-fulfilling thing. As one person grows up watching Star Wars, they then work in that fashion or towards that fashion.
Yeah,
and then they might create the art of their time. Will project more or less a continuation of the fiction of previous generations.
Right. Well, that's how
why Christopher Paolini uses elves just as Tolkien did.
Right. And I mean, it even goes one step further. Like, you've heard all about this development being done on space elevators. So the space elevator was a science fiction object in Fountains of Paradise. And it was like somebody was like trying to come up with an interesting device.
A buddy of Bob's?
I think it was Wells. H.G. Wells? No, it wasn't Wells.
Maybe. He was pretty active, I think.
It was Fountains of Paradise. I'm terrible with author names.
Sure.
And I mean, he needed this interesting mechanic, so he went through and did a feasibility study in like the 50s or 60s on if a space elevator could work, and like through talking to people who understood orbital dynamics, realized that it would have to be at the equator. It would have to have a tether that goes to geosynchronous orbit, and then or geostationary orbit, and then like a tether beyond as ballast. And like, so he basically architected the modern day understanding of a space elevator using like kind of, vague magical sci-fi words to fill some of the gaps that their technology, like especially materials technology, didn't have back then. But now we have like fortunes are being made by people making radical advancements on space elevator technology. There's something called the X Prize.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is they invite teams to come and try and build a space elevator cart and transmit energy to it wirelessly, and the fastest cart that goes up this big flagpole.
Yeah.
Some people are using like microwaves. Some people are using.
It's held in tension, right? It's like a string or a cable,
right?
Like not necessarily like a structure that's built, because it's being pulled from an orbital thing that's trying to fling itself out into space.
Yeah.
In gravity.
So what you really need is a material that's strong in stress, but not in compression, and then that allows you to reduce a lot of weight, because it's like a couple hundred miles to geostationary orbit. So you literally need to have like as thin of material as possible, because like propagated over that entire length, if you use like an actual like pole or a big thick steel cable, it would be like hundreds of thousands of tons. And it's like, how the heck can you put that up there? So you have to make it, ideally like ribbon thick.
Could you anchor the earth end to a buoy?
If it was on the equator. Yeah. So they have theorized that you could do ocean-based Space elevator platforms for sure.
Perfect. And then you could, probably just extend something. You would probably have to extend something into the ocean, right?
Yeah, it'd have to be anchored for sure because there's going to be a tremendous amount of force pulling it up, I believe.
Right.
Like trying to whip it out into space.
Right.
I think. In Fountains of Paradise, it was hilarious that like as part of the sociological plot devices, for whatever reason, they did trade studies and they found like there was a gravitational anomaly that made the best place for the space elevator. Like at
This
the top
is in
of
the story,
in
they
story,
do.
yeah.
Right.
At the top of like some super sacred Tibetan peak, and then like a big corporation comes in and like levels the peak in Tibet.
Sounds
and
about
like
right.
there was like a temple on the top, and they like kicked all the monks out. Like
I feel like that future is very much in play.
Yeah.
Considering A, that it happened in fiction, and B, that Tibet's been annexed by one of the more authoritarian entities on the planet.
Big China.
I bet they'd probably come up with the space elevator first.
Dude,
I'd be surprised if they got there.
Whoever just builds that material that the cable is made out of, like that's really the big technological gap we're missing. That'll just do it almost immediately if we figure it out.
So I think that's
uncontested. Fiction drives the future.
And so I think then too, we're kind of verging a little bit on, villain territory. With the leveling of Tibetan monasteries, that's generally not the behavior of a good guy.
Yeah, but it's a bad thing for a good cause, right? Because it opened up space to us, and millions of jobs were made, and people could get away from Earth, and we could spread across the stars and save the entire race.
So ultimately, then villains do more good than heroes.
Certain villains, like there's a different archetypes of villain. There's like lawful evil, chaotic evil, and neutral evil, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like lawful evil, I think you were talking the other day about Dr. Doom and how he's like trying to save the human race, but he's doing it like through evil, what we would call evil means.
Yeah, like total autocracy and like a relatively immortal dude ruling the world with an iron fist.
But some men just want to watch the world burn.
But he doesn't. It's the one future out of 10 billion that in which humans aren't either enslaved or extincted.
But he never succeeds, does he?
Well, no. The heroes are always there to thwart him.
Right. So you then have to weigh his good deeds versus bad. And the good deeds that he actually performs provides a service to the public, which allows them to rally together against a common enemy, which is him, which actually brings people closer together. And a hero alone can't do that. A hero has to have a villain to unite the people against.
So I think, too, this goes to kind of, I know I had you recently, or maybe not recently, but read over some, just Satanism.
Yeah.
Dabbled in it.
Yeah.
And I think, by some people's definition of good, probably including their own, Satanists are good people.
Yeah, you can have good people and bad people. I think televangelists are pretty evil, but, they're on the side of Christianity and, they preach moral altruism and virtue and stuff like that. So there's going to be good Satanists and bad Satanists. And if you look at the tenets of Satanism, they're like, be a good person. Like, don't fuck people over, don't steal energy from people.
And I think it's this idea that, knowing what the devil would be telling you, or kind of is, whispering on one shoulder, helps just contextualize what you're hearing on the other shoulder.
Right. You have to have an angel and a devil on both shoulders.
Yeah. And I think another work of fiction that I think is, well regarded, Heart of Darkness.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily science fiction. And it's in a lot of cases, not necessarily fiction, but,
that was about like the Amazon or like
Congo.
The Congo, right.
And ivory, and there's lots of, obviously dark and light themes. And what's in pursuit of ivory, these people are just blinded to the reality of what they're doing and the horror of what they're doing.
Yeah.
Like the climactic moment is when this like Belgian like ivory trader has an existential crisis after realizing the ravaging that he's done and as he's screaming like the horror. Just, I mean, I forget how exactly he dies. Pretty sure it's unpleasant though.
I read that in like not first grade.
No, it's a
Like
high
sixth
school.
grade or
Like I think. I mean, I read it in high school.
something. Oh, okay.
But yeah, I mean, the like blinding light, thinking that like, one thing that you've been told, like, he was probably told that, oh yeah, going and getting ivory is like, good for people. And the main character is even disillusioned in thinking so. He signs up for this expedition. He goes there and he's ready to extend, knowledge and civility to the people of Africa, and ultimately, is unable to do so because they're really just there in the interest of ivory.
Right. So he's a villain in this?
No, but he's blinded to reality because of the good that is cast upon just obtaining ivory.
Mm-hmm.
And the economic gain that they get from, selling it in Europe and as an ornament.
Yeah.
And
that's what happens when you conflate capitalism with moralism.
Well, and it's the idea that, like, I mean, maybe, if there had been more voice given to the evil doings, if like some Satanists were there, it could have maybe gone differently. Or it wouldn't have been. Or just people contrasting the majority narrative. Yeah. A majority of these Belgian people were like, let's just do this, like anything, any means to this end. And then this character is the only person that he finds that's even like, I thought we were here to like do some other stuff. And they're like, oh no, it's like all ivory.
Yeah.
But again, I think that's why, if we go back to eating the rich, that if you can control people so easily as to say that like, oh yeah, cash is like super nutritious, all you need is cash and then you don't need anything else, people will believe that and then they'll be edible.
Right. So eat the rich is then not to be taken literally, and it's a metaphor for redistribute wealth.
I mean, yeah. I think that's probably how it's used.
I'd rather do that than actually eat a rich person because I'm not big on I've been trying to eat more veg lately.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I want to keep
like
that
the Eloy, you want to get that slim figure and those.
Yeah. At the very least, I don't want to eat a human. That doesn't sound fun, but
right.
Redistributing the wealth and approaching the system from a different angle so that it doesn't become so concentrated and disparity, it doesn't reign, then let's do that.
Well, and I don't even know if like, full distributing, like you can't, I mean, I think if you do the math, it's like Bill Gates's entire net worth funds like one California school district for like half a year or something.
That doesn't sound right.
It's something around those lines. Maybe every California school district for a year.
Gotcha.
But like ultimately, the problems or maybe features, the bugs or features of the system that allow for people to accumulate, $100 billion. Just taking that money out of Jeff Bezos's pocket, banning pockets big enough to hold $1 billion.
Right.
Doesn't work.
Right. No, I mean, that's not how you solve this problem. And I don't think that most rational people are saying confiscate Jeff Bezos's wealth. What you need is a systematic change, because then another, Jeff Bezos 2.0 is going to come out and do the same thing when he invents space elevators.
So
and
if we
he's just
assume,
going to create a monopoly on space and become way richer.
He's working on Blue Origin is definitely
trying to get in there.
A thing.
Yeah.
So I think if we then assume that it is only the rich are only, looked at as worth eating if they've subsisted like on a diet of nearly entirely cash and some other leafy greens. Kale's pretty expensive.
It is. It's basically cash.
Yeah, and then I mean, of course, the superfoods and the purity of the food that they consume is, what makes that food valuable is the fact that they'll pay that money for it.
Right.
I think so. I mean, what is missing between the rich of today and the proletariats now is shared experience.
Yeah.
Most people don't really interact with, like, if you're some well-to-do, kid, grow up, move, to some university, don't really worry about applying to scholarships if you can just, like, pay your way in, as the USC
Right.
kids
Well,
might have.
so where does that start? Is that privatized school systems?
It's
I think Norway or someplace like that has banned private school systems. So
I
they
mean,
actually force the wealthy to attend school from a young age with the less wealthy.
and share experience, basically, with build some class camaraderie.
Right.
Um,
Well, I mean, all you're trying to do with that is build perspective. So have you heard about this experience that happens to everybody who goes to space for the first time? So when you see Earth and you see the thin blue line of the atmosphere,
yeah,
they describe it almost as a mushroom trip, as like a psilocybin trip that occurs.
yeah. It's
And
just like humans are not meant to have been able to perceive any of this.
right, almost. It's like such a fundamental shift in their consciousness because they all of a sudden realize in a very visual way how interconnected we all are and how unimportant we all are and how like in this together we all are. And I think what you're trying to do is build that into people without having to send everybody to space because we can't do that yet. So, one of the ways to address that is by at a young age showing everybody that they will, succeed or fail together.
Or, as we used to do, at a young age, give everyone a start in cannon fodder,
Yeah, by like conscripting them into the military.
public service.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's, in the old world, as old as, just maybe World War II,
Mm-hmm.
you had the well-to-dos of the day, like JFK,
Yeah.
serving in military,
Absolutely.
despite being way loaded enough not to need to.
Yeah, I mean, in wartime you still have that, and then you have draft dodgers who get splints and they don't go. But regardless, I mean, Israel does this right now. Everybody, male and female, has to spend like a year or two in the military, and it's interesting because you see like these ultra wealthy people go and just get into the dirt, and it makes them understand that they're all protecting something together, and if they all fail together.
So I might speculate then that it is kind of these the alloy of Silicon Valley that that they would say public services for losers.
Yeah, or they just, their time is more valuable than picking up trash on the side of the road. And there's an argument to be made in terms of strict productivity and value output, but at the same time, missing that shared experience has longer negative impacts on society as a whole.
Right, and that governments would be best off just getting out of their way so that they can do all of these magic wealth-generating things.
Right, exactly. And then not pay taxes on them.
Right.
Right. And that's one of the problems too.
Yeah,
Gotta
but
fucking nip that in the bud real quick.
is it, again, like, if we're not going to ban pockets, then what is the solution there? And I think it's just making public service cool again.
Make public service cool again? How are you going to do that?
Run for public office?
Yeah.
I mean, what else is there?
Well, I don't think running for public office is the form of public service needed. Because if that was the case,
Sure.
then you'd have less corrupt politicians.
Military is another form of public service. I
Mhm.
think there's plenty of it. And I think, I would, I think we both recently voted, and the lack of familiarity with names that haven't necessarily appeared super incessantly on our, streaming platforms or whatever, there's a definite lack of informed consent when, administering some power to the government.
Okay. Just in terms of how difficult it is to make an informed decision on a ballot?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's tough. I mean, I sat down for 3 or 4 hours and researched every single person on my ballot. And most of it was like boring. Like these are local, like paper pushers. And I was able to like look on their Twitter and, read articles about them. And by doing so, I was able to make informed decisions and vote across the aisle based purely on merit. But if you're in a voting booth, I mean, unless you bring a prepared sample ballot, I can't imagine there'd be any way to make an informed decision other than just voting along party lines.
So boring is an interesting word there, because I think the only elections that aren't boring are the ones that get us really agitated, right?
Yeah.
And is boring better than agitation?
There are certain roles that I think boring is really important. I mean, boring just means that there's nothing eventful happening, and quite often in many of international relationships and stuff like that, if something interesting is happening, it's generally negative. It's never like, oh my God, China and European Union are about to forge this brand new relationship that's going to be so beneficial for everybody. It's like, all right, this country did some sketchy shit again, and everybody's pretty freaked out about it.
So I am basing a lot of my decisions off of websites, and really mostly like the first page of that website. And I think in there I get enough of an idea that I can go one way or another. I disqualified one judge because their like catchphrase was that they had a passion for justice, and I want boring judges.
Yeah.
Justice is somewhere where passion doesn't belong.
Right.
And
that's a good point.
I think that voting requires some degree of passion. The office of citizen is one where passion is, highly relevant, and that's why I think
that's interesting. So
I actually provoked to agitation before we're allowed to just remain bored.
I didn't vote for someone for county recorder because his slogan was "Make voting boring again," and I was like, that's not a good slogan. Like, we need to get some energy into this shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think one or a few founding fathers or people have said that citizen is the most important office of
Absolutely.
government.
Yeah.
And needs to be exercised in good faith, informed consent,
right,
etc.
Even just showing up and voting, though, I think is the bare minimum that you should be allowed. So my personal philosophy is that we should fine people if they don't vote. So, in my eyes, as a citizen of the United States, it's your job to vote, right? If I hire you to flip burgers at my grill, and you're like, flipping burgers doesn't really make a difference. It doesn't matter. You and I both know. And I'm going to fucking fire you. You don't get to make that decision. That's your job that you have. Whether or not you like it, go do it.
Would you want to see more Satanists in public office?
I don't really care about people's belief systems as long as they're virtuous and they're trying to be a public servant, not a celebrity politician. You know what I mean?
But for
merit is what I care about.
A good chunk of the country, religious is how you measure that.
I would trust a Satanist in a position of public office more than I would trust a Christian or a Catholic or somebody Judeo-Christian.
Anybody Judeo-Christian?
Just on principle, based on the track record. So people tend to exploit the morality of religion to their own ends and train people to sort of ignore dumb things that they're doing. And I think that if somebody is actively practicing Satanism, they're probably actively practicing self-reflection on their beliefs, because it is not a popular decision to be a Satanist. It means that you looked at a doctrine that is heavily reinforced globally and questioned it from the most fundamental level. And I think that that's one of the best qualities that you can have.
Yeah, but Lucifer is in the Bible as well.
Yeah, but he's cast in a very different light.
True.
A red light. Like us. Yeah.
You know that Biden would be the second Catholic president if he won?
Really?
Mm-hmm.
What are all the other ones, Protestant?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Protestant, never had a Jewish president. And JFK was the other Catholic president.
Gotcha.
But, you were just quick to lump in the entirety of, the Judeo-Christian tradition, which at its whole, that includes, nearly half of the world's population.
Right. Okay. So here's my thought on that. I think that Judeo-Christianity, the first thing that they teach you how to do is suppress cognitive dissonance. So the whole idea of you should be ignoring reality and feedback from reality and supplanting this different idea is like the first thing they teach you to do. So I think from a fundamental level, somebody who's been trained to suppress cognitive dissonance is probably not the most fit person to lead.
Well, it's you're not expected to do it from birth, just from baptism.
Right. I understand that.
So that like is the original sin, is that you can see things as they are.
That we can't see things as they are.
No, that you can.
Okay.
And it's
right, yeah,
like
exactly.
They're
telling you not to trust the evidence of your senses, and that's a great way. That's like the first step in any indoctrination protocol. So that's my policy.
And does fiction then not follow that same indoctrination protocol? Like, suspend your disbelief. And
yeah, but it's temporary suspension of disbelief. If you were trying to pass off the Lord of the Rings as gospel, then I'd have a problem.
I would teach the Lord of the Rings as gospel.
Yeah, but
I'm going to read those books to my kids, and then they're going to learn those morals and build the future.
And there's lessons to learn in them. And I think that's what religion, that's the good source of religion. Like, it can teach you, it uses parables to impart life lessons, and you can learn from the mistakes of people thousands of years dead. But when you start being told to, create political decisions based on this book and to align with the church, I think that's sketchy.
So people say a lot that like the Bible is the best-selling book of all time,
mm-hmm.
which I mean is probably, if true, due to the fact that it's been in print since as long as things have been in print.
Exactly.
So I'm wondering, like, how many years into the future do you think Lord of the Rings might outsell the Bible?
It really depends on like the future of public policy. So like we would have to, for the Bible to stop being at the top of that list, we would have to like fundamentally change as a society to like give
not
religion
expect
a different
it
role.
In every motel room drawer.
Yeah. And to probably like create ironclad separation of church and state, to the point where it wasn't so high, we didn't say under God when we're giving the Pledge of Allegiance or whatever.
Guess what year we added the words under God to the Pledge of Allegiance?
Was it like 1945?
54.
54.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Are you dyslexic?
That's it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember the date perfectly. I just said it wrong. Yeah, my grandma taught all of her kids to like not say it because she was like, that's weird. Like, I don't know why we added that in.
A different grandma than the one that made you promise your soul to God?
Yeah, definitely a different one.
Okay, I was going to say that would be pretty
yeah,
dissonant behavior.
Yeah, I remember getting in trouble for not saying under God when I was doing the Pledge of Allegiance. And at one point, they called my parents in, and my dad was like, he can fucking not say that if he doesn't want to because he's the Buddhist, right? He's like, you can't tell him that. Like, freedom of speech, bitch. And I was like, yeah.
That sounds like
that's
a Buddhist.
Right. And I like backed out of the room.
Freedom of speech, bitch. Buddha, probably.
Yeah. That's basically what it's like, gangster Buddha. Yeah, he'd like drink some fucking perp drag and then get all crazy on your face. Yeah. That's the Buddha they don't teach you about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Buddha that they level mountains to keep from you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's my policy. So what were your 3 axioms again? Have we gone over all of them?
Fiction is the future.
Yeah.
Which we've more or less proved beyond a doubt.
Yeah, definitely.
Villains do more good than heroes.
Yeah, I gotta agree.
And cash is the most nutritious leafy green.
I'm still a little hesitant on that one.
I was having a hard time figuring out what the fun way to say eat the rich.
Yeah. I think you nailed it. It's fun, family friendly, and now we don't have to say eat the rich. We definitely won't say eat the rich because we don't have to.
Right. Yeah. I mean, people are salivating over them anyway.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I think, what are you going to do? If the world ends this year? Because the Mayan...
Oh, well, I'll just get rich. Learn the language of your prey. Be an orca.
Yeah. What's your prey?
The rich.
The rich are the prey.
That's who I eat.
Ooh. That's a spicy thing to say in a capitalist nation, isn't it?
I mean, hey, if you want to make money, you got to take it from somewhere, and poor people don't have money.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. I think that...
The pickpocket doesn't steal from the poor, generally. Well, he might, but only because that might be who's in proximity. But generally, a pickpocket would, target somebody that's sporting some visible jewelry, just flashed a Louis Vuitton wallet.
Yeah.
or at least has an iPhone.
Yeah. Alligator skin bag.
Right.
Something along those
It's
lines.
a sure sign of something desirable.
Of extreme wealth.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. That's the first thing they give you when you get rich. Is
Alligator
alligator skin bags. Yeah. And that's where you carry your cash.
Alligator skin bags would be a good band name.
That's good, but it's nasty when you say skin bag in one word.
Skin bag is just kind of nasty, and I think
Yeah.
with that being said, we're back in a testicular cul-de-sac.
A testicular skull. Yeah.
We stayed out of it for a good few episodes, but here we
The
are.
wrinkly skin bags.
Oh my god.
That's the new band
That's
name.
enough of that.
Yeah. What's our time like?
We're at 40.
40. All right. Well, do you want to just like talk about dumb shit now?
I mean, isn't that what we've been doing all along?
I mean, we've been talking about dumb shit, but it's like kind of been low-key important.
Feigning intelligence.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's almost that we're feigning dumbness, right? By saying like things that are kind of
Yeah.
dumb.
End of the world.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. We were gonna talk about like what.
Okay. So what's of all the things happening in 2020? What's going to be the end of the world?
All right. So let's see. We got murder hornets. We got Yellowstone super volcano.
January
explosion.
1, it was World War III with Iran because that
Right.
Iranian general was bombed in Iraq,
Yeah.
which
Is like
feels like much longer ago.
God. Yeah. See, that feels like it was like 10 years ago. That was this year.
And then obviously,
Nuclear
COVID.
war. Yeah. COVID. That's a big one. Can't forget about COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Wildfires just burning everything down.
Right.
That's possible.
Wasn't there like
solar
some
flares?
hurricane or probably toxic algae or I don't know.
Oh yeah,
It's-
and I also kind of remember like a giant asteroid coming between us and the moon.
I mean, it depends on your Facebook algorithm as to what you think is going to end the world this year. But
You guys
can
forgot
be
about
pretty
the
assured.
Pentagon? The Pentagon released these UFO footage.
Oh, the
Oh,
Pentagon released the UFO
that's true.
footage,
Yeah.
so we might get invaded and
It's the invasion's imminent,
consumed by some hyper intelligent race.
right?
What else is there? I heard a funny theory the other day where it was like, time travelers from the future keep coming back to 2020 to try and save humanity, and so like they got rid of the murder hornets because we don't hear about those anymore.
Right.
But it's like at what cost? Because now it's just going to be the next thing that takes us out. So like there's all these time travelers coming back to 2020 trying
Why
to
don't
save
you
us. But the
expand
next
on
thing
this?
just steps up.
You should expand on this fiction a little bit, and then maybe it'll come true. But just make sure you write one that in which the world doesn't end in 2020.
Well, right now we actually have a platform to send a message to the future.
What, writing things?
This podcast.
Oh, sure.
You have a
Posterity
line
will find
directly
it.
into the future. So you could ask, so if we made a good enough argument right now to future time travelers, we could theoretically summon one to this recording session and have him walk in that door in the next 5 minutes.
It was, I mean, I know Stephen Hawking had a party for time travelers, but he didn't put out the invitations until after the event.
Did anybody come?
No.
See, he didn't say anything
But
interesting enough.
I mean, would he really say that they did? If
Ooh, I know what
if
we
they
could do
did.
to summon some time travelers. Time travelers. In the next room over, we have big titty goth GFs. So come down. They're waiting for you.
you're gonna be the end of the world.
All right, they're not interested. They probably have better big titty goth GFs in the future.
I think there's a good chance too that we are ourselves like the Eloi being housed on this like Eden-like planet in which aliens could just swoop down and start farming us. Maybe abductions are just like McDonald's of Mars sourcing their meat.
Dude, they wouldn't need to. So with advanced enough technology, why would they need to consume, like, they would just need to take one guy that was particularly tasty and then clone him a bunch. Put him in a robotic cloning facility and just have, like, Jeff steaks flying off the assembly line. Fucking, like,
Jeff.
infinitely, ad infinitum. Like, there's no need to actually consume humanity from the source.
Do you think Jeff will upload his consciousness into a von Neumann probe?
I think that if an alien species took a dude and they were like, all right, we're going to clone you for your meat from now on.
I meant Bezos specifically, as in Jeff.
Is he going to upload his mind into a von Neumann probe?
I mean, if anybody would have the money to, it'd be him.
Once the technology exists, if he could, yeah.
He'll
I
make
could
the
easily see
technology
that, yeah.
exist.
And then he'll upload his own consciousness and suppress all over other artificial intelligences. So that's
and then
one.
offer them 2-day delivery.
So that's one thing that's going to happen. That's why it's like this race to singularity is in a lot of science fiction.
In the
it's-
AI sense, right?
Right. There's this pretty good understanding that the first person who develops artificial intelligence is going to use it. One of the things they're going to do with it is suppress other new AIs from getting built. They're
And
going to
so
suppress
what
others
exactly
from
is like the
attaining technology.
singularity threshold? What is that event horizon?
Like full self-developed and self-iterating general intelligence,
Right.
which could either be like
So we
a
hit
digitized
singularity.
human, you and me, like human beings,
Yeah.
hit singularity. Yes, I agree.
Nice.
But
Did the sea slug?
see, I don't even know if you could say we hit singularity though,
Mm.
because like we're not able to make ourselves that much smarter. That's like I think one of the big aspects of AI that's so
Yeah, isn't that why
attractive.
we test ourselves and
Yeah, but like the gains are like infinitesimal. Like how many IQ points could you like reasonably hope to gain in the course of a lifetime of self-work? Like 10, 20 maybe, but like an AI that has access to like a server farm to just expand into and like build more server farms could like have an exponential growth in intelligence quotient like
all the
over
more
the course of a couple
reason
of days.
to ban tests, right? Because I mean, clearly, then IQ wouldn't measure the necessary intelligence if machines are as smart.
I mean, I think we want ourselves to be as intelligent as possible, right? You know what? I heard a crazy thing the other day. So, when when your brain is growing from childhood, one of the biggest things that can stunt brain growth is iodine deficiency. So right now, like major third world populations have iodine deficiency, and I can't remember some organization.
Where do they
speculated
naturally get iodine?
iodized salt?
Okay.
So you
Yeah, I
could
know.
raise the mean intelligence quotient of humanity like a non-insignificant amount by just making sure every third world nation has access to iodized salt. Like by overnight, like over the course of one generation, you could like massively increase the intelligence of these third world countries
There's
just with salt.
a podcaster that I listened to that speculated that Rome fell because of the ubiquitous lead plumbing.
And everybody was just getting lead poisoning
And
all the time.
and the symptoms of which include like just aggression and like
Madness.
dumbness and like
Huh.
um
Interesting.
and then they just basically cannibalized the empire.
Yeah,
I
I could see it.
So what were you saying though,
About what?
just recently? I had something else, another
Testing?
Yeah.
You want to end testing in school environments.
Yeah, and so you were talking about the growth and development of the brain, and I've done an amount of research into the subject.
An amount.
There's this Italian lady, Maria Montessori, who now has some preschools like named after her.
Mm.
And I mean, her whole thing is that like you let the student teach itself because an inner teacher is better than any outside teacher.
Okay.
Like it's really like a teacher's role to air quotes teacher for all you audio listeners.
Right.
It's a teacher's role to kind of just facilitate that and like put say a instrument in a kid's hand and just let them kind of bang around until sound that sounds pleasing comes out.
Right.
And I mean, it's I think pretty obvious that the first language that you know best is your first.
Yeah.
The one that you know in childhood, the one that you construct your consciousness to. And I think, the same could be said for like musicians or, people that learn an instrument or a trade.
So a lesson self-taught is a lesson best learned.
Yes.
That's the saying. I agree. So what you're talking about is charter schools. And I think that it is important and it's a successful teaching tool to develop autodidactism into pupils. So right now what we have in our public school systems is factory schools. We train pupils to be good factory workers. And so tests are a way of motivating and incentivizing students to learn certain amounts of valuable skills in certain time frames. However, those are quite often stunted because those same individuals, had they been sent into a charter school system and taught to self-taught,
And
which is autodidactism.
saved from tests.
Well, I still think that tests can be a good tool, but they should be tests tailored to the individual,
Sure.
right? Because tests, like I said, act as a great incentive to act as a deadline.
And on an individual level, then it's more of a test of character than any sort of standardized test.
In certain realms, yeah, for sure, like literature and philosophy, but mathematics, you still need to have relatively standardized mathematics tests.
Sure.
Because you don't want an engineer learning some fundamental principle incorrectly, going out, applying it to a bridge, and having the bridge collapse,
Work incorrectly.
and like killing 1,000 people.
Right.
So you have things that have objective reality, I think, are important to have standardized tests for, like mathematics.
So, should public schools be made Montessori?
I definitely think that our public schooling, our factory system, is totally fucked up. And I think it produces unmotivated kids who have no ability to learn new skills and teach themselves new things. And in a way, that's the point, right? You don't want a highly skilled and self-starting workforce if you're training factory workers. You want people who do the job you give them very well without questioning it. That's in an ideal case. But as we move into the automation revolution, we need to move away from that. We need to have more self-starting individuals that are able to provide value in ways that machines can't. And machines can assemble things way better than we can.
So, Bezos went to a Montessori school, and he was actually, his parents were told that he was a bad Montessori student because he was too task-oriented. And his, philanthropic thing is making Montessori preschool, available to everyone.
Oh, okay. That's pretty neat.
But back to her, Maria Montessori, who I think would be, Montessori schools would be more ubiquitous if she was kind of listened to while around and kind of talking about stuff. But she was kind of relegated to, just early childcare because she was a woman in the 1940s and 50s that, wasn't expected to be able to contribute substantially anywhere else. Okay. But she really takes in different age groups, what people are learning, how they're learning it, what parts of the brain motor skills develop, and how different language centers and other things develop as the body does. Yeah. And I think that there's another way in which class camaraderie and shared experiences between the wealthy and the poor can be reached is, I think, as we mentioned, school, right? In Norway, they banned private schools, and now everyone's playing together. Right. Play is where learning happens best, and I think, if we have a shortage of violence and war, then camaraderie could be built, at recess. Rather than, in Vietnam or whatever. Camaraderie and rivalry. Those are the two fundamental things that competition creates, right? Yeah. Even adults. You have massive NFL teams creating bitter enemies and best friends. It's an interesting duality. Yeah, rivalries sell and rivalries agitate. Yeah. They're not boring. Nope. And it keeps the populace entertained. It's like the gladiatoriums in Rome. The whole point was to allow the emperor to continue basically exploiting the people and doing things that weren't in their best interest. And they get all pissed off throughout the whole week. And they're like, these taxes are crazy. I can't even afford a new chisel. And then they'd be like, oh, but at least I can go watch some dudes bash the shit out of each other at the end of the week. And then they'd go and they'd get that energy out. And the next week, it's just back to servitude. So, is the government not then just doing its job by providing us with such, gladiator matches that we can't help but tune into? If they're going to continue exploiting us, then yeah, it's the least they could do. But in an ideal world, we, things are less agitating, not boring, more equitable. So, should politics be playful? Should politics be playful? Or should it be agitating? I would love to see Biden and Trump box.
We should have that. We should fucking choose that. That should be like a big factor in the debates. Like you have just the fisticuffs round,
Right.
and they just like strip down to like some like 1950s boxing shorts and just go at it.
So you're not the first person to suggest that the boxing winner be made the arbiter of justice.
I mean, I don't think that should be the only criteria, because then you could just have some like really strong.
Probably not. And then
dummies.
in that case, might becomes right.
Right. Although I think it would do a lot to humble certain individuals who don't seem to understand their own.
You don't have the
Don't
shit
have-
beat out of them enough.
Yeah, I think some of those politicians could use with a good schmack.
Have you ever been in a fight?
Yes,
Nice.
couple.
Hmm.
I try not
Were
to.
you the instigator, or
No, I wasn't.
were you just kind of dragged into it?
I mean, I was like annoying. I was, I went through my annoying phases as a kid, but like I had a bowl cut when I got in a fight. It was pretty dope. It was a good one.
Were you fought because you had a bowl cut?
I
How
was
else is
actually
it
fought
relevant?
by a kid who looked a lot like me at the time. It was like another kind of like
Interesting.
chubby white kid with a bowl cut, and it was at the skate park. And like we didn't even have any rivalry really, I thought. And then one day he came up to me and just like threw my skateboard, and I was like, "That's it, we're fighting." So we fucking fought.
That's it.
And that was it.
You're much younger than your brothers, right?
Yeah, I have one brother. He's 8 years older than me.
So you couldn't fight your brother.
No, I remember him smacking me or something like that one time, and then my mom like leveled him, and he was really nice to me again.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, she was like, "You're 8 years older than this kid."
My only fights have been with siblings.
Yeah,
I mean, really one sibling. My older brother, he was skinnier, and I was, chubbier. So it was a pretty even match. He had the reach, but I had the weight. So I just
Yeah.
had to take it to the ground. It
Yeah.
was definitely like a sort of mixed martial arts.
just chopped his legs out.
um,
That's pretty cool. How old are
yeah.
you?
Usually a single leg takedown was enough.
How old are you?
I mean, I don't think we physically fought like past really probably like middle school.
Yeah.
Since he was out of middle school, I mean, once he hit a growth spurt, it was kind of like,
Yeah.
unfair.
Once you get to a certain age, most people tend to learn how to fight emotionally
Right.
and socially.
But you'd still rather see a 78-year-old and a 74-year-old box.
Just those two
Okay.
in specific. I would love to see those two fuckers just lay each other out, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, a double KO, just like they both knock each other out with the same first punch.
Well, maybe
You know what
we
I mean?
should. I know Joe Rogan offered to host a debate, so maybe we, the cognitive cul-de-sac, will offer one-time offer. We only have 2 weeks to cash in on it. But Joe Biden and Donald Trump, if you want to box each other, we can make this a boxing ring.
Yeah, I will construct a boxing ring specifically for both of you.
All right.
It'll be great.
Perfect.
Mhm.
To
the death.
And to any time travelers, if you want to witness that event, I mean, you better book
Yeah.
your ticket now, right?
Book your ticket now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
We'll probably sell it quick.
yeah. B.Y.O.Big Tiddy Goth GFs.
Okay. That's
That's important to understand because we don't have any.
right.
lied
and
about
you're
it.
assuming there's a surplus in the future.
I mean, if the future's, yeah, there has to be, right?
Well,
probably-
I mean,
they're
only if
probably cloning
we've
them.
seen it in fiction.
Yeah. I see it in my fiction. In my fantasies. It's nothing but Big
All
Tiddy
right.
Goth
So that's
GFs.
Brandon's future.
Yeah. That and space elevators.
Okay.
Mhm.
We've
That's
talked
it.
about space elevators.
It's just those
In
two
the
things for me.
future. Mhm.
That's it.
Well, I mean,
It's a low
so
bar,
now that
but-
we have the future pretty clearly set in stone, should we?
Let's make it happen.
I think we're probably over an hour now, right? Just about. Well,
Cool. We'll
then
wrap it
that's.
That's been called a cognitive cul-de-sac.
I've been James
I've been Brandon.
for now.
Signing off.
Okay. Later.
Bye.